Please.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for the invitation. So I come from Chicago, so the whole behavioral angle may be a bit far-fetched. Actually, anyway, let's see how that goes. Okay, so this is John Ward with Ghazala Mansuri at the bank. So let me give you a bit of motivation. This is going to be a paper about entrepreneurship and trying to understand the barriers to entrepreneurship. Okay, so you know, with this kind of audience, there's perhaps, this is not needed, but basically it's clear that entrepreneurship is important. It has played a central role in economic growth and development. So we take Solo's seminal paper. Basically, he looks at the U.S. Growth experience in the 40s and 50s, and basically assesses that only a fraction of the increase in output per worker was driven by increases in capital. And the rest sort of is attributable to technical change that basically requires entrepreneurial talent, right? Now, while it's true that some currencies have grown dramatically, others have remained pretty much stagnant. But it's actually hard to believe that these differences in growth come from lack of entrepreneurial talent. So the key question then is basically, what are the main barriers to entrepreneurship in a poor country, right? Why doesn't entrepreneurship flourish in poor countries? There's basically two explanations that the literature has put forth. One has to do with access to finance, right? So there's a large empirical and theoretical literature basically suggesting that there's credit constraints. And so once you alleviate credit constraints, then you'll see firms grow. And Mohammed Yunus basically sides with this view when he says that, you know, giving the poor access to credit allows them to immediately put into practice the skills they already know. So the idea here is they have these ideas, they have tons of ideas. All they need is capital to basically put these ideas into work, right? Yet, I mean, there's a new sort of idea that's beginning to emerge in very interesting new work. It basically builds on the idea that what's actually missing is managerial capital, right? Or business skills, managerial capital, human capital, and so the idea here is that it builds on this occupational, at least that's my view, this occupational choice model a la Lucas, the span of control model, where, you know, if you have very limited managerial capital, you're going to run a very small firm. But the idea is that, you know, if somehow this managerial capital can be taught, then, you know, you can expand the span of control, and therefore the firm is going to be larger. Okay, so what do we do exactly? So this is going to be working in Pakistan. So we partner with PPAF, which is an apex institution funded by the World Bank that basically gives funds to microfinance institutions. And basically we're going to be working with one of the largest MFI partners institutions called NRSP, the National Rural Support Program. So this is going to be a large field experiment. So we're interviewed more than 4,000 members that were organized in, by the way, can you hear me? Because I don't think this is even on. Is this, well, whatever, you guys heard me anyway. All right, so that's great. Anyway, so we're going to be organized in 747 groups in 3 different geographical regions. We're basically going to have a 2x2 design, and actually Bertil is going to have a very similar design too. This is what happens when, you know, you have a lot of field experiments going on in the field. So the first one is going to be business training. Okay, and we're going to be dividing these 747 groups into 2 equal sized beams. One is going to receive business training, and the other one will remain as controls. And the business training basically is going to be an 8-day course. Okay, and I'm going to be very specific about what that means. The other treatment arm is going to be a loan lottery. So eligible members are going to be allowed to submit requests of up to 100,000 rupees, whereas the current limit is 15,000 rupees for a 7-month period. Okay, so if the request is approved, it's going to go through the standard procedures that the credit officers use. And then if the amount is larger than 50K, then it's going to go to the lottery. If you win the lottery, you get the amount approved. If you lose the lottery, you revert back to the loan size that you had previously. Okay? And so basically, as you can see, clients are going to fall in one of 4 categories, right? So you can either be offered business training and be assigned a winner of the lottery.
You can be assigned business training, but be assigned a loser of the lottery, not receive business training, but be, and you guys follow. So four different, as the 2x2 design suggests. Okay, so this is Pakistan, and this is the areas where we worked. So one of the key questions that we're interested in, first off, what are the key constraints to entrepreneurship, right? Is it lack of skills, or is it lack of capital? In particular, when we focus on MFI clients, on the microfinance clients, the questions we're interested in is, does business training improve the management of existing enterprises? Does it lead to lower failure? Does it lead to better decision making? Does the fact that I'm trained make me more savvy in my financial decisions? Okay. Now, so this is as far as business training goes. When we talk about the loan size, the key question here is going to be, now these are all going to be microfinance clients, so in a sense they already have access to credit. The question is going to be, does the current loan size basically restrict growth of the firm and profitability? In other words, are clients credit constraints, even at the current loan size? And of course, more generally, the important question to the MFI is basically whether these kind of interventions may improve repayment, client retention, and in fact, ultimately, whether they're cost effective. Okay, so these are what we're going to find, and then I'm going to walk you through them carefully. But basically, the upshot is, business training led to an improvement in business and household assets, especially among men. Okay, it also led to better financial decision making. Now, the impact of the loan lottery is going to be weaker, and perhaps that's because microfinance clients were not credit constrained to begin with. Okay. Now, the interesting thing is that treatments seem successful from the institutional perspective, and by that I mean that business training increased demand for larger loans without negative effect on repayment. So it seems like business training is cost effective. There's a caveat. We looked at children's schooling, and it turns out that it's children's schooling is adversely affected by business training. So if you think about it, business training basically can have two effects. On the one hand, it may raise the opportunity cost of children. On the one hand, it raises income. Therefore, if education is a normal good, that would increase schooling. On the other hand, now you have, if the business at home is very profitable, you may want to have your children work in the business, and so the net effect is ambiguous. Okay, we're going to find, in fact, that in some instances, actually, children's schooling. So basically, kids spend less time in school and more time working at home. Okay, so this is what I want to do. I want to talk a little bit about the business training per se. Sandro basically mentioned yesterday that education is kind of hard to understand, and in fact, if you look at the literature on business training, you'll find that each paper has a different education. The business training in each paper is actually very different. There's a lot of stuff out there, so anyway, so whatever we find is going to has to be taken into account what kind of business training we're talking about. Okay, so anyway, standard. Okay, so this is basically my attempt at, and actually Bertie's, I should add Bertie's, which again is probably going to be different, but this is basically from so sort of comparing this paper to Dean's paper and Greg's paper. So the target audience, by and large, everybody uses microfinance clients. The interesting thing is that not all of our clients are going to be entrepreneurs. So there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be involved in agriculture and livestock and otherwise that are not necessarily running a non-farm business. In terms of program design, ours was based on the Know About Business program by RLO. Greg and Dean used Freedom from Hunger modules adapted by local firms. Also differences is who's going to be training, who's going to be delivering this training. Dean and us we used MFI staff, so basically so the microfinance staff was actually trained, and they're the ones delivering the training. Greg used, I believe, professional trainers. Again, differences also in the frequency. We use daily for 6 days plus 2. from 9 to 4. But Dean used once a week 30 minutes. Greg used once a week 3 hours. And of course the duration is also going to be different. And that's going to result in total number of hours being very different, right? So ours at the end of the day is quite intensive. It's 46 hours compared to 11 hours for Dean and 15 and 18 with Greg's paper. So again, I mean, you know, each financial, each business training is you know, and you know, there could be many characteristics, and there would be, you know, they would be also different. But unfortunately, there's no clear sense about, you know, what's most effective. I mean, this is where, I guess, where we are at this point. Okay, so the modules are actually fairly standard. So, you know, we talk about, you know, the entrepreneur, the project, marketing. The nice thing is one of the things they do in the course of these 6 days is to actually go to a nearby market, where they basically you know, introduce the concepts of product, price, place, and promotion, and also the importance of establishing links. But the point is that, you know, it's very experiential. It's based on case studies. So you know, the population is going to be very literate. Only 15% of the women actually are able to read and write, and so the modules will have to be adapted to this kind of population. And so a lot of it is based on case studies, experience, and so on and so forth. Okay, so it's very hands-on. It's not necessarily you know, sitting in a classroom. This is also part of what they do in the training called a village assessment, which is basically they map out a village. And basically they point out where the businesses are, you know, all types of occupations, what people are engaged in, you know, natural resources, and so on and so forth, to get a sense of perhaps where business knowledge, business opportunities are, and business gaps are, and so on and so forth. Okay. All right. So this is the timeline. We started in November '06 with the baseline. Then we did an orientation where the business training was introduced. Business training was rolled out from February to May '07. Then we did a follow-up hand-holding where basically the trainers visited a subset of those that were offered business training. And basically the idea there was to try to have them sort of, if they had problems with the business or they had, you know, issues that they, you know, concepts they had not learned, that they could basically, you know, sort of a one-on-one follow-up on the business training. Turns out actually these did not have much of an effect. So I'm actually for the purposes of this presentation, I'm not going to even talk about this, but it was there. Then the loan lottery period opens from November to June. We have follow-up data on December, 6 months after the end of the lottery, and we have MIS data till November 10. Okay, so again, we're going to be using MIS data. We're going to be using the roster of borrowers and detail based on a follow-up service. Now, these surveys are fairly comprehensive. They include a business visit and a bunch of questions on socioeconomic characteristics, time allocation, children outcomes, and a lot of stuff on the business, as you'll see. Okay, so in terms of you know, characteristics, so 2 things to point out. Well, first off, you know, ever in business, 60% of the individuals are running some sort of business. So this is not ever in business, this has a business, a baseline. So 60%. Now, of course, this is much higher than the Pakistani average. Pakistani average in these areas, if you take a representative sample, is about 30%. But of course, these are microfinance clients. So it's expected that microfinance clients would have a lot of, among microfinance clients, you would have businesses, okay? Household expenditures is basically translating to $3.30 per day. So they're a bit richer than they're a bit rich, but I mean, you know, they're fairly poor. Differences in land. And also, you know, in terms of empowerment, so sorry, what I have here is we have the sample stratified by gender, and this is going to be important as we go along. So the point is that there's actually huge differences between males and females that are microfinance clients, and so this speaks perhaps to fundamental differences between men and women, as well as, you know, different selection process into becoming microfinance clients. But one thing to point out is basically in terms of the number of decisions, in terms of empowerment, women basically seems to decide on fewer items on their own. So it's only less than 2 compared to 3.3 for men. And this basically is out of 8 decisions that are involved, like household decisions or individual decisions. So decisions about kids, about durables, and so on and so forth. These are decisions that are made alone by the member. Okay. All right. So when we talk about businesses, I wish I had a business. A female business picture, but actually they're also very different. So women basically tend to work from home. They tend to work in the handicraft, tailoring type sector. Their log averages are much smaller. So we're talking about $380 a month for men compared to $80 women. So women's businesses are much smaller. Much smaller. So again, the businesses, male and female businesses are also quite different. Okay. Now, when we look at the response rate between baseline and follow-up, recall that the follow-up happened 2 years after the baseline. We have basically 85% response rate, and luckily there are no differences in attrition between treatments. So we can go ahead and just use the data as we have it. So we're going to be doing standard first differences. So this is going to be the outcome variable at follow-up. BT is basically going to be a dummy for whether or not the person was offered. Sorry, the group where person I was offered business training, but was assigned to be a lottery loser. This is basically whether the person was assigned to be a lottery winner but was not offered business training, and this is the combination of business training and being assigned a lottery winner. We're going to control for stratification variables, and that is basically gender and region effects, region fixed effects, and we're going to be controlling when we have where we have it for baseline characteristics. Okay. Because business training was offered at the group level, we're going to be clustering at that level, and also because we're going to be looking at a whole slew of outcome variables. We're going to follow Kling, Liebman, and Katz, which basically also follows the literature, and construct basically standardized measures for families of outcomes. Right. So think of Z as being a family of outcomes, Z. So actually this should be Y. So basically Z is basically Y standardized. So you subtract the mean of the variable and divide by the standard deviation, and then you basically just take an average of that. Okay, and so I'm going to be talking about a bunch of families. In the paper you have the individual outcomes that conform the family. Okay, so let's come to the results. These are business results. First of all, we find an improvement in business knowledge. So this again is an index of questions about competition, questions about that may or may not have been taught during the training. And notice that these are basically improvements over from the baseline to the follow-up, but more importantly from the time of the training took place to the follow-up. So basically this is there's a year and a half that has gone by from the time the training took place to the time the follow-up took place, right? So this is not basically my cramming for an exam and then basically spitting out whatever knowledge about business training, and then after a month I don't remember. This is basically after a year and a half these guys are better able to recall. Better to recall business knowledge, or basically to know basic business knowledge, right? And as you can see, basically this is concentrated in the groups that were either offered business training but were assigned to be losers, or were business training and also assigned to be winners, right? So basically, if you were just a lottery winner, assigned a lottery winner, but did not receive business training, you basically show no. So clearly, this is something to do with the business training received. Okay. Okay, so no action in terms of new business creation, no action in failed business, but then some action here on aggregate business practice, and this is sort of easy stuff. So this is basically, do you keep your books separate? Do you record the sales, so on and so forth? There's some effect on aggregate business practice, this business operations. So this is basically purchase of some assets. Notice that this is concentrated among people that got the possibility to borrow larger loans. But sort of these improvements do not translate into aggregate sales and profits at all. Okay, so that's zilch basically. Okay, now let's look at how this looks like when we interact with female. Okay. Okay, so what we find now is, first of all, so actually, if anything, females improve business knowledge. So the p-value here is less than 0.1. What we also find actually is that among women, basically there seems to be some businesses created in the households, except that the females themselves are not involved in the business. Okay. Now, so this is kind of surprising. So we looked at some of these. What's happening here is basically that when you ask women whether or not they make basic decisions about the business, 40% of them say that it's actually their husband. So the female is the one that's the one that's a member of the institution. The female reports being involved in the business, but actually who's making the decisions is the husband. Now, so basically it seems like the husband somehow took advantage of the fact that the woman could now borrow a larger amount and basically just uses those funds to set up a business not involving the female. Okay, so these are new businesses created in households of female members, but without the involvement of the female. Okay, so it's the man running the business. Okay, we also see that business training led to a decrease in business failure. So in other words, business training was able to keep businesses afloat longer. Now, of course, this result may be good or bad. So we have an average of 40% business failure in the span of 2 years. And of course, if the businesses that failed are basically because entrepreneurs were able to secure better jobs, then that would not be telling much. It turns out actually when you ask, about 3/4 of the individuals that report business failure actually are now unemployed. Okay, if you look at their consumption now, and again, I don't want to make a big deal about this, but if you look at the consumption, they're actually they have lower consumption than those that had surviving businesses. So the bottom line is basically that this is a positive result in the sense that business training basically allowed the survival of businesses. Okay. Now, so now this of course creates a problem. When we look at aggregate sales, again, we find nothing. But notice that because there's a differential failure rate, when I look at aggregate sales and profits, the composition of businesses that are at follow-up with a business is going to be different, right? So it matters basically whether. So if I think that the worst businesses, the worst control businesses have dropped out, I could see a no effect here simply by composition. So it could be that business training led to improvements in the business. However, because in the control I'm only taking the better businesses, when I compare that selected sample, smaller selected sample, to a larger sample in the control that includes all those businesses that would have failed in the control but are now still in the treatment, I could find no result. Okay. So we can follow the literature and compute Lee bounds. Unfortunately, these bounds are very wide. So basically anything, in terms of, these bounds are consistent with, business training leading to, negative results on sales and profits or positive results on sales and profits. Now, so one thing you can do, sorry? Oh, so one thing you can do is basically look at, okay, what are the businesses that are actually failing? And it turns out the business failure is correlated with age, digit span recall, and wealth. In other words, better digit span recall, so that's a test basically to see, you flash a card with 8 digits to the respondent, then for 30 seconds, and then you ask the respondent to basically give you back their number. So individuals that have better digit span recall are less likely to have their business failed. Richer individuals are less likely to have their business fail. And so it seems like the businesses that are failing are basically the crappy business, the worst businesses. Okay, so in a sense, if you want to put your prior distribution, if you want to, this should tilt the prior distribution towards positive effects. Okay. Now we can look at individual and household outcomes, and what we find here by and large is business training, either alone or in combination with a loan lottery, leading to big improvements in income and assets. Okay. Also CO cohesion. CO cohesion is again is an index basically with questions that have to do with collective action, has to do with more trust in the group. CO is a community organization. That means the group of borrowers and so on and so forth, right? And so now of course, so I've shown you no effect on aggregate sales and profits. Of course, this could be compositional effects, and I've shown you big effects on income. So I guess you may be asking yourselves, what is going on? How come we see big effects on income and no effects on sales? And so one is this could be due to a compositional effect, and so these lead bounds are consistent with increases in sales. But also what's going on here is, again, as I said, not everybody's involved in businesses. A lot of the people are involved in self-employment, so in agriculture, in livestock, and so on and so forth. Now, if I'm a farmer and I sit through business training, I may benefit from business training, right? I mean, what are they telling me? They're telling me, be careful about where you buy your inputs, how you price your stuff. Maybe there's opportunities for collective action, getting with other farmers, and so on. So I can definitely benefit from business training, even though I don't have a non-farm business. Okay. So what we can do is basically we have measures of self-employment at baseline, right? So we can interact. We can see basically whether business training had a differential effect for those that were self-employed, and this is what suggests, and indeed that is the case. Okay, so if I look at income and assets, I see that most of the effects actually, so if I want to look at what happens with self-employed individuals that receive business training, I would have to add up these two. But basically, you can see that all the effect is concentrated among self-employed individuals, right? So business training had an effect on self-employed individuals more so than people that did not have. This is not a very deep point, right? I mean, if I sit in an office all day and you're telling me about how to compute profits, well, that's not what I do, so I don't benefit as much. Okay. But this is important because it sort of, it tells me, it gives a rationale as to why I may see improvements in income, but I don't see that on sales and profits, because sales and profits are necessarily a smaller sample of those that could benefit from this training. Okay. I can look at gender differences in these individual outcomes, and basically, again, I find no effect on females. Okay, so the effect on females, again, I would have to add these up. This is not significantly different so this is not statistically different from the controls. Here, it's even, so basically, it's pretty much a wash for females, and it's positive for men. Okay, on income and assets, and so on. Why is that? Why may that be the case? Now, again, of course, the decision to join a CO or the decision to run a business, whether you're a male or female, these two selection processes are very different for men and women. So one thing we can do is basically add a whole bunch of characteristics to see whether these different characteristics are masking differences in gender. And actually we find that, including a bunch of controls does not really affect the results. So there's something about gender per se that is not explained by ones you control for other characteristics. Now, another thing you can say is that basically the training received by women is of low quality, but in fact the same staff train both men and women. Also hand-holding, as I mentioned, has no effect. And so what's going on? Well, we're talking about South Asia, we're talking about Pakistan, right? And so in a context where labor markets are missing for women, okay, the quality of the marginal entrepreneur is going to be very low. Okay, so if I think about Lucas's model, the decision to be a worker or an entrepreneur is driven by the wage, right? The marginal entrepreneur is basically going to have an opportunity cost equal to the wage. If the wage is very low, that marginal entrepreneur is going to be very crappy. Okay, and so a lot of these women may see businesses sort of as a fallback option. In fact, that's the only option if they want to do something. We have, it's also true then, so that's true. What's also true is basically that women may face mobility and time constraints that prevent them from capitalizing on business training. And we can look at that. So this is basically time allocation. Again, huge differences. So time spent in businesses, males spend a lot more time than females, so about 4 hours, about twice as much. You can take all members or business owners only. And of course, the flip side is basically time spent in household and family activities, that then cooking, laundry, childcare, and so on. Basically, women spend a lot more time, right? So clearly, women are spending little time in the business. Now, of course, again, you could say, well, I mean, even so maybe making improvements in the business does not really require time. And that's true, except that a lot of the decisions in the businesses of females are actually not made by females, are made by other individuals in the household. Okay, all right. So now let's move on to the demand for credit and repayment. Okay, so remember we have the lottery. So what we're going to do is we're going to slice this in the period before the lottery and after the lottery, okay? So what we see is basically that actually business training led to an increase in the loan amount. So there's an increase, so business training led to higher demand for capital. Only for men though. Women, this effect is zero, okay? Only for men. Yet, there's no effect on repayment, okay? So this is a situation where business training led to larger loan sizes and no default, and no consequential default, okay? In fact, after 90 days, this is zero, but the point estimates are negative, okay? So again, so this is good news for the lender, okay? Offering business training at least leads to positive results. Okay. Now, of course, one can do a more full-fledged cost-benefit analysis. Now, what happens after the lottery? So basically, you find the same pattern. Now, of course, now you have people assign the lottery winner, right? And what you do see is that, of course, those assigned lottery winner, especially if they're male, they will want to borrow more. Okay. They do, and they do borrow more. Okay. Not so much for females, again. Okay. And in terms of default, again, no major effect. There's some positive here, but actually, if you look at 90 days, again, no impact on default, yet higher loan sizes, both before and after the lottery. Okay. Okay. So here now, then what we look at is, okay, so business training has all these effects in terms of incomes through better business practices or self-employment practices. But what about financial decision making? Okay, so could it be basically that business training? What business training does is, look, you sit through 6 days of these classes, and by the end of it, you realize that you just suck at running a business, and therefore that might prevent, or so that may give you an idea that maybe borrowing, you should not be borrowing, basically, right? I mean, you're not that great at it. Maybe you should try something else and not borrow. Okay. So what do? Basically, we create an index of how likely someone to repay a loan. So basically, we use a credit score, and what we're going to be doing is basically interacting this credit score with business training. The idea being that those individuals that have an ex ante probability of defaulting with business training should be less likely to borrow, okay, if what I just told you is right. And in fact, that's exactly what we find after the lottery, not so much before the lottery, but after the lottery is where you perhaps are borrowing these larger loan sizes. And in fact, it's concentrated among men and not women, okay? So you see the pattern, okay? So this is the idea. So business training per se, business training makes people want to borrow more, but in fact, among the people that receive business training, those that have a higher probability of default are less likely to borrow, okay? So this is kind of an interesting result, because basically what it says again is that business training is allows a selection of the right borrowers, okay? Okay, so children outcomes, as I mentioned, there's some, so there's some positive. Again, I don't want to make too much out of this, but it seems like, children are more absent last school day if you were assigned a lottery winner. So let me conclude. So first off, there's evidence that business training led to improvements in various dimensions. So in the beginning, I was talking about entrepreneurship and how entrepreneurship could actually affect growth and whatnot. Now, let's be clear, most of the businesses that we have in the sample have no hired employees, have low levels of literacy. So basically, these are subsistence entrepreneurs, okay? Now, it would be naive for me to believe that, this kind of business training would lead to growth in Pakistan. I mean, that would be a great thing, but most likely it's not going to happen. So while it's true that the impact of these kind of businesses in the economy may be small, we're talking about a large share of low-income households that are involved in this kind of business, right? So we could see business training basically sort of as an effective poverty alleviation tool, okay, as it leads to better management and better financial decisions. Okay. And so with that, I'll conclude. Thank you.